Hello out there. Welcome to our podcast today. This is Coach EJ, the brand.
Hey guys, and this is Coach Aaron the Source. Good morning. AJ, we've got a pretty good one today. Why don't you tell our listeners about it? It's, some people might turn it off, I guess. Others might listen intently. So
Yeah,
remember, guys, this is an opinion show based on our experiences.
right.
So
And our topic, Aaron, today is, should you be coaching or slash training your kid out there? So, hey man, it's that's a good one because you have a lot of parents that want to be involved in their athletes' journey and process. So I think it's a good subject to talk about, and it's our opinion. So I think it's pretty cool, Aaron.
yeah, I mean it's like anything else, two sides to the coin. There's some pros and there's some cons. I guess it really comes down to knowing how to stay in your lane. There's some things there's some things you don't know. And, I know the internet is out there now, and that's kind of been the go-to for a lot of parents in terms of getting information. But, unless you know how to parse that information properly, you may be, applying the wrong thing to your student. And that's usually what I see is I don't really get into the whole, this program and on the training side, this program's bad, that program's bad. It's really a lot of times it has to do with the application. And that's where you really need to understand the things that you're doing with your kid is it applicable? Is it appropriate for your kid at that age and at hit their particular stage of development, actually more specifically? So that's kind of the first thing that jumps out at me.
Yeah, that's a good point, Aaron. Like you said, there's so much information out there. And I think the development of an athlete, it takes time, and it's not like something happens overnight or we're going to do this because this is what I heard is the best. You have to be really careful about doing that. I think that's why we're professional trainers, and that's why people come to us because they want our information. Our information is valuable, Aaron. Collectively, you and I, 60 years, of doing a lot of stuff. And not only what we do, but the people that have trained us before us that taught us this information that we gathered, professional information. So yeah, it could be sketchy out there a little bit. Parents, just be aware that everybody's development is a little bit different, and seek your professionals. So Aaron, I think that's a good first point you make. There's a lot out there, and you just have to be careful about what you're doing, and you're knowing your kid too is good. The second thing that you might be hitting on is that what's that relationship between parent and their athlete as a coach first before a parent. That right there is, I think, a sticky situation, I feel, Aaron, and you might be covering that too. But I always thought that, when I was growing up, my dad coached me, and he had good information. Okay. I respected what he did, but it got to be too much. Our relationship would suffer from a son to father relationship, so I think that dynamic there is something that needs to be talked about a little bit too, Aaron.
Yeah, I agree. But before I make my point, I actually want to mention that there's probably two other podcasts that you guys might want to listen to that's related to this. One is Too Many Cooks in the Kitchen, or Too Many Cooks, and the other is How Does Your Athlete Learn? I think those are 2 points that really work together with this subject, because if you've got your information, you've got the coach's information, and then you've got the trainer's information, then maybe your kid's playing on multiple teams. So this other coach is trying to tell him how to do something technically. You really can start to confuse the kid. And most athletes and these kids want to please everybody. And so that's not a good situation to be in. But I would suggest listening to that one. The other one is, again, How Does Your Athlete Learn? You really have to be in tune on how your athlete learns. If I had $1 for every time a parent said, they just don't listen to me. I told him that, but he listens to you.
Oh,
And so part of that is, one, the messenger, not the message, and two, really being in tune on how your athlete learns, because you might tell an athlete something, but that may not be the best way they learn and grasp a concept. And it kind of goes back to what you were talking about, the dynamic of the parent and the athlete, and how that might color that interaction. If you just yelled at your kid for not taking out the trash or not walking the dog, and now you guys are going to go out and you're going to give them some hitting instruction, or some running or some training, well, there might be some residual bad
right.
feelings about that, especially if it was something where you yelled at the kid or the kid didn't want to do it or whatever the case may be. So that can also color that that funnel of information, because again, one of the things we'll always talk about is training is the transfer of information. You want that to be good information, but you also want that communication conduit to be clear of any sorts of things that can skew that or keep the kid blocking you out, all of those sorts of things. So all of those things kind of come around together into affecting how well you can train your athlete.
Right.
So you have to be cognizant, I think, of all of those things. My suggestion would be, stick to the basic rudimentary things that are pretty clear cut, that you can explain, that doesn't leave a whole lot to interpretation. Maybe talk to coaches or trainers and say, hey, I'd like to coach and train my kid. What would you like for me to work with them on? One of the things I talk to my parents about when they want to train their kid is say, hey, look, only repeat what I ask you to repeat. Okay. Because there's certain things I do in the course of training an athlete, and a parent might be watching, that I'm doing for reasons unbeknownst to them. So maybe I'm trying to just test something. I'm trying to see what the body's reaction is going to be, or I'm trying to elicit a certain response just for that moment. But if you now parrot that, you're kind of maybe messing up what I'm trying to do. It's kind of like, I always talk training is like cooking, and say you're making a stew, maybe say you're making chili, and I make this chili, and then my sous chef or other guy says, I think I'm gonna put a little salt in that. And right. Then another guy comes through and says, I think I'm gonna put a little salt in that. Next thing you know, you start adding all these things to the recipe, and you don't get the flavor or the taste that you want. So, sometimes parents, you can contaminate what we're trying to do if you're not in sync with us. I might say, hey, oh, no, there's enough salt there. Don't put no more salt in that, No. So it's always good to check in with the coach and the trainer first before you embark on some of these things. Just so that you don't mess up some of the things that they're trying to do. And also, maybe you might think, well, Aaron's working with his running, I'm going to do his lifting. Well, that lifting needs to be complementary to what I'm doing with the running. Right. So you still need to communicate with me, even though you might think it's not necessarily in the purview of what I'm working with the athlete on, but it does affect what we need to do on my side. So you definitely have to communicate with me and say, hey, Aaron, this type of lifting we're thinking about, maybe bring me a program. I can take a look at it, say, hey, look, that looks good. Boom, whatever. We both had the horror stories of athletes coming back and saying, oh yeah, I hurt my elbow, or, I hurt my knee or hurt my back. Well, what were you doing? Oh, well, I was at the gym, or I was at home and I was doing this, I was doing that. It's like, well, who told you to put the balm on? For you Seinfeld people, you'll know that reference. No one told you to put the balm on. Who told you to use the balm? So, Jackie Childs. Anyway,
right. Jackie Child.
So you got to be careful. Training athletes, I know it seems like it's very the mechanics of it can look very simple, but there's some intricacies, and that's where people like us come in.
Aaron, you and I were talking about this the other day a little bit about, people who trained us, and we were professional athletes, and we had trainers, and we stayed with our trainers until the end, until we stopped training. It's not like, you can just go out and invent stuff or think you know something because you saw somebody do it. I think when you're dealing with athletes as we are, there is a certain pedigree we have, and we have established that through trial and error, through help from others that were professionals who trained us. And I have a strong opinion about this. I don't think parents should be coaching their kids when you start getting to a certain level.
Yeah.
Where the athlete is getting better, and we're trying to refine that high level of skill that we've been working with them on. All of a sudden, we might do something like you said earlier. I think this is a very good point. We might be training an athlete a certain way to get a movement pattern. That's not how we're going to train them eventually, but we're trying to teach them the movement pattern first, so we can teach them maybe that more complex movement pattern later. Mm-hmm. We're not jumping. We don't go A, B, Z. We go A, B, C, D, E, And so I think sometimes when parents start coaching their kids, they see the Z and they go A, B, G, Z. And I'm like, whoa, slow down here. No, it doesn't work that way. Right. We need to slow down. He's ready for this, or she is ready for this right now. And we're moving through these steps slowly. But again, instant gratification, Aaron. We see a lot of people always trying to get to the end goal before they get the fundamentals down. And there's a way that, you and I know, go about it to reach that potential. So I think parents out there, if you're listening, be careful. Like I think Aaron said, talk to your coach, figure out, like, this is all that I want you. I tell my parents sometimes they're in this, hey, this is all I want you to work with them on. That's it. Yeah. And leave it at that. And leave it at that's it right now, Yeah, well, I saw you doing this the other day. And no, let's just kind of just work on this one little thing. Let's master that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you got to kind of let us do our thing. Right. And if you don't, it can, like I said, it can slow the process down. It can derail it. I mean, here's a perfect example. Just yesterday, I had some kids who were outside warming up with their dad. And I just caught the tail end of the conversation, but the son was like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. And they were talking about arm swing. And the dad was telling him to pull his arm up. And the kid was like, no, I don't think that's what Aaron wants me to do. And I happened to catch the tail end of it. I had to explain to him, no, you pull the hand down to generate force for horizontal force production. And he was like, oh, and I was saying, and that's an example of, hey, here's you, well-meaning, obviously, and he's trying to correct his son, but he's giving him the wrong correction. And I just happened to walk into that conversation, and the kid's like, no, that's not what that's not what I'm supposed to do. Right. And it was kind of funny because we're talking about this now, and it just happened yesterday. And again, the parents, you can't take it personal. You can't take it personal. You got your kids they know who the professionals are, and they want to listen to them first. And again, there's a dynamic that you got to respect between the coach and the athlete, and the trainer and athlete, and then, your own one. And sometimes that can be blurred. Me, I always have a rule when the athletes come to my gym, especially when they come inside, there's only one coach here. I tell the parents, there's only one coach here because I don't want that contamination of my process. Because you're just not going to be privy to what's going on in my head and how I'm trying to do things with your athlete. And the kids understand, they know who the professional is, and it's not a knock on any parents who've played sports before or played at high levels,
Right.
but playing a sport and also training an athlete are two different things. And it's funny, throughout the course of my career and just working with other kids of a lot of different professional athletes, most of those professional athletes kind of take the same track that I have. I don't train my kids. I
You
have
said
a
it.
lot of professional athletes from,
Right.
Joe Montana, Andre Ward, Bill Romanowski. The list goes on. I've had a lot of professional level athletes whose kids that I train that they say, nope, I'm turning it over. I'm stepping back. And if athletes of that caliber realize the value of doing that, then maybe some of you parents might think twice before, you do those things, or at least ask for some guidance.
Aaron, I'm glad you said that, because that should be for the parents listening. You just listen to what Aaron just said, that professional athletes turn their kids over to Aaron to train them and step outside the facility and don't say anything. They don't even go, hey, what should I work with them at home? They don't even do that. I've seen Andre Ward and all these guys come in and they say, hey, we'll see you next week. And that's it. It's nothing more than that. And you be careful about training your kid. I think there's that relationship, that parent to kid relationship dynamic. You want that to be always strong. And then also, they know better. Those professional athletes know better, and I know better too, because I've seen a lot of this happen to athletes that you're getting to a certain point. Then a parent steps in and starts trying to add stuff. Player gets confused. And you know what? We're like artists. We got to take that clay, break that clay down again, and rebuild the clay and mold it back the way we want it. And it's like we're going back 2 steps instead of going, forward, 3 or 4 steps on something that we might say like, hey, I was only working on that. And then the parent says, well, he's not doing that now. They're not doing that now. Well, slow down here. We're only working on this right now because we feel that this could help something in the future that they could be doing wrong. I always like to think there's one thing that could fix 4 or 5 things sometimes, and so that they get ahead of that a little bit. Aaron, I think that's a great point, man. And, I always, I'm pretty opinionated about it because baseball is a difficult game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You start messing around with players' fundamentals and messing around with their body positions, and we don't have the movement pattern we need. We're starting over again. It's hard to get the player back to where you want them to be when you start messing around, or that parent starts messing around a little bit with that. And not saying anything bad about parents, I'm not saying that, but if you're entrusting us with your kid, let us do our job. Let's do what we do professionally.
Yeah. No more to add.
hey, I said my piece. I said my piece. Yeah. But anyway, like you said, Aaron, have the parents hit those other podcasts you mentioned earlier. And I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this today, Aaron. I know you and I've mentioned this quite a bit in the past week and a half. So again, this is Coach EJ, the brand.
And Coach Aaron, the source. We'll see you.